Hey guys, this video is about poultry litter management, mainly the standard manure management of broiler, layer, and turkey operations in the state of Virginia. My name is Lindsay and I'm a student at Virginia Tech, and this is for the Animal, Ag, and the Environment class. Alright, so to get started I wanted to tell you all what poultry litter is. I'm sure some of you already know, but for those of you who don't, poultry litter is basically any type of waste that comes from the production area on a poultry operation. So that would include poultry manure, deceased birds, or any type of animal waste product, including feathers or bird body parts, bedding from the houses would be included in that, any leftover feed, anything like that that comes from the production area. Poultry litter is one of the best organic fertilizers available to crop farmers, and right now land application accounts for more than 90% of poultry litter use in the US, and the rest would be put into animal feeds and other such products. And poultry litter, since it is recycled from operations themselves, it's a pretty readily available source, making it easy for farmers to obtain it and use it for their fertilizer on their farms. So what's the problem here? Well, since poultry litter has become such a readily available source for farmers, it's become very popular as a source of fertilizer, and that has led to the overspreading of poultry litter on land application areas over time. From that, another issue is the improper management of this manure on the farm, whether it be in storage or during land application. Some issues have led to nutrient enrichment of the land that it is applied on and contamination of the water sources because of the nutrient enrichment. So runoff or leaching into the groundwater. Nitrogen and phosphorus have been two pretty prominent nutrients that have contaminated the water surrounding land application of any fertilizing over land, but large poultry operations that may or may not have had large discharges prior to regulation should have the regulation to help prevent any type of excess runoff, anything, just like what we've been talking about in class, that we need to have regulations in order to keep farms from overstepping their boundaries when it comes to nutrients and runoff and discharge. Another problem is that producers lack an understanding of nutrients. Sometimes they don't know the exact nutrient requirement for their crops that they're growing, or the nutrients that are available in their litter that they're using, or the potential for excess nutrients to enter the waters around their land that is being fertilized with poultry litter. So how do we go from the problem to having a solution? Well, back in 1999, the Virginia General Assembly passed the Poultry Waste Management Act, which basically just told farmers how to be environmentally responsible while handling their poultry litter while in storage, land application, everywhere in between, before and after, however you want to think about it. It also stated that confined poultry operations were required to obtain a Virginia pollution abatement permit if they were chicken operations with an annual production of more than 20,000 head, or a turkey operation with an annual production of over 11,000 head. They're also required to have a nutrient management plan if they have a VPA permit. It's not required to have a VPA permit in order to get a nutrient management plan. There's also tons of free assistance, especially in the state of Virginia, through the Department of Environmental Quality, Virginia Co-op Extension, any of those types of resources can help you find assistance. They can help you put together your nutrient management plan or help you find somebody who can. Also included in the Poultry Waste Management Act was regulation to help regulate poultry waste brokers. So these waste brokers are any non-poultry producer who possesses more than 10 tons of poultry waste in any given year and who transfers some or all of that waste to other people. So I'll let you guys do a little bit more research on this if you're interested in it. It seemed a little bit off topic and I wanted to save some time for other things as well. But these end users, the poultry waste brokers, and the people who they sold to were required to fill out DEQ forms for both them and the producer that they bought from. And it basically just includes land application locations, application rates, methods, the nutrient management plan, if available, is included, nutrient analysis of the litter, of the soil, basically any information you would need when it comes to a nutrient balance, for lack of a better term. Now, you've heard me talk about the Virginia Department of Environmental Quality, or DEQ for the acronym. You're probably wondering what that is, unless you already know, but if you don't, they regulate the storage, application, and record keeping of poultry litter, soil, and nutrients in both of the litter and the soil. That's not the only thing that they do, but in the aspect of what we're talking about in this video, that is their job. So they say that the litter must be handled in a consistent manner with the DEQ fact sheet, which is where a lot of this information has come from, or it needs to be specified by a Virginia Certified Nutrient Management Planner, and that will be given to whoever will be applying litter to the land, so the end user, which is what I was talking about in the last slide. The DEQ forms must be filled out by whoever is applying the fertilizer to the land. So what do these people require of storage of your poultry litter? Well, first of all, DEQ has these storage requirements that are listed on this slide. First, they would like for you to store your poultry litter under a roof, but if not a roof, then it must be at least 100 feet from any type of water body. That includes rivers, streams, creeks, ponds, any type of water that might run off into a larger body of water. If it's stored outside for more than 14 days, it must be covered with an impermeable barrier to resist wind to keep your poultry litter from blowing into the neighbor's yard or the river down the street. You can put your poultry litter out for less than 14 days, but it's still a general rule of thumb that you should cover it in some way to keep it from blowing all over the place. There is no storage of litter where the water table is less than a foot deep. If it's stored where the water table is less than 2 feet deep, you must have an impermeable barrier beneath the litter to keep it from leaching into the groundwater or any water that might be running through that area to keep it just from getting the nutrients in the water. The litter also must be protected from stormwater runoff accumulating on or underneath of it. So basically that's saying that you should have a covering and have your poultry litter sitting on top of something to keep any type of water from bringing your poultry litter with it wherever it's going. Some other important facts about storing your litter. There's significant nutrient loss during storage. So it's been studied by North Carolina that stockpiled broiler litter typically has less than half as much nitrogen as litter at the time of removal from the production area. So basically, when you stockpile your litter, it's going to lose at least half of its nutrient availability for your land application. So, for this reason, you should test your litter as close to the time of land application as possible for the most accurate results of your nutrient content for spreading. Next, we're going to talk about soil sampling. Another important aspect of land application of poultry litter. You want to take soil samples to check and see what nutrients are already available in your soil for the crops that you are growing. So what you do, you take a soil sample that it cannot be any more than 3 years old. So you can have them sitting around if you want, but it's probably better to take them as most recent as possible. And you will take a representative sample from each field that you plan on applying poultry litter to. And at least 20 cores, so 20 little samples, will randomly be taken throughout the fields that will be receiving litter application. If you till your land, then you'll need to take the top 6 inches of soil for your sample. And if you don't till, you can take the top 4 inches of soil for your sample. Application timing is also a very important aspect to land application of your poultry litter. For different crops that you grow, you will want to apply your poultry litter at different times of the year based on when you plant your crops. Basically, this information is here for you to look at, but basically you don't want to ever spread litter more than 30 days prior to planting, because in that case you're going to lose some of your nutrients, and when there's no crops in there to hold this organic matter to the soil, a lot of it's just going to wash away. And if there's nothing holding it in there, it's just going to leave and it won't be there for when your crops actually need it. Some additional application information that you might be interested in. Nitrogen, it has 2 different forms. There's the water-soluble nitrogen, which is known as urea, which is the popular form of nitrogen that we would use as fertilizer. And then there's the form that's not taken up by growing plants very well. So that's the type that would, in excess, leach into groundwater or run off into surface water and contaminate the surrounding waters around your land application. Phosphorus is less soluble and less likely to move into the groundwater than nitrogen. So application can be based on crop uptake of P2O5 for a 2-year period. And in case you didn't know, P2O5 is the form of phosphorus that we use in fertilizers for crops. Repeated over-application of phosphorus can lead to phosphorus losses into surface water. So it's one of those things you just have to keep an eye on, make sure you're soil sampling and not overspreading your phosphorus nutrients. When it comes to calculating your application rate, you will calculate that for both nitrogen and phosphorus separately, and then use the lowest of the 2 rates to know how much to actually apply to your land without over applying one of the nutrient sources. So when you have a nutrient source that isn't completely fulfilled, then you will supplement that nutrient with commercial fertilizer for your soil. So that brings us into application rates. And according to an article that I found on the Virginia Cooperative Extension webpage, there are 4 options of choosing how you will calculate your application rate. The first one is based on your nutrient management plan. So When you are developing your nutrient management plan with your Virginia Certified Nutrient Management Planner, you will determine your application rate at that time. So your soil samples, your litter samples, all that kind of stuff will kind of play into how you decide to develop your application rate. Option 2 is the standard rate for application, and it means that you can apply 1.5 tons per acre every 3 years to any crop, only if there are no other nutrients from organic matter applied in the last 3 years, and there's an absence of the current soil sample analysis and recommendations. So basically, if you have no other choice, you can do this 1.5 tons per acre every 3 years. Option 3 is the soil test recommendations, and these are dependent upon your soil sample results. So this will determine your application rate based on what your soil needs specifically. So if you, it's reliant on your litter test results as well, but mostly dependent on your soil sample results. Option 4 is the phosphorus crop removal, and it's used when the soil test phosphorus levels do not exceed the maximum value, and you can see the maximum values are located in Table 1 in the bottom right corner. If you want to take a look at that, feel free. Also, the long picture on the left side is an example for calculating the poultry litter rate based on the soil test recommendation. So you would calculate that for option 3. Another really important part to deciding or regulating your land application are the conditions in which you can apply your poultry litter. On this slide, it tells you any condition you basically can't spread your litter. So if you're less than 100 feet from any type of surface water without a buffer, or less than 35 feet from any type of water source with a buffer, less than 50 feet from a limestone outcropping, so any type of limestone that comes out of your pasture, you can't apply within 50 feet of that, or within 25 feet of any other type of rock outcropping. You can't apply your poultry litter anywhere less than 200 feet from any occupied dwellings unless the occupant signs a waiver to the buffer zone. And you cannot land apply poultry litter in any manner that would discharge waste into sinkholes in the area. Next are the land application conditions that you can apply in, especially if the ground is frozen. So many people think that you cannot apply fertilizer when the ground is frozen, but you can apply poultry litter if the land that you're applying on has slopes less than 6%. A minimum of 200 feet of vegetative buffer exists between application and any other source of surface water. Only those soils characterized by the USDA as well drained with good filtration are used when the ground is frozen. And at least 60% of uniform cover by vegetation or crop residue is present to reduce surface runoff and leaching potential. So when the ground basically thaws, is it going to take some of these nutrients with it, with the water that's unfrozen, or is it going to stay? And that's the goal here. Next, I have a real life example. So my cousin and her husband own a Cargill turkey operation in the Shenandoah Valley, and they produce about 91,000 head annually, give or take. And they use their poultry litter for land application to their own crop fields, and then they sell some to other crop growers. They Till their litter in the houses if the floor stays wet to keep it fresh and not as matted down. And deceased birds are composted and turned. The litter shed, they have a shed. It is covered with a roof. The litter shed holds all the storage litter until it's ready for application. Some will sit outside for less than 14 days if necessary, if the room isn't available. They soil test annually and also have annual audits, and they manure test every 3 years. And to me, this was a good example of following the DEQ requirements because they do focus on land application around limestone, as that's a pretty big aspect to the Shenandoah Valley, and making sure that it's 20 feet from the property line and all those kind of regulations as well. Last but not least, I have a list here of how to develop a land application plan. This is taken from the extension publication that I spoke of earlier. So if you wanted more information, check that out on the sources page, the last slide of this presentation. So in order, you can develop your land application plan by determining the amount of nutrients in your litter by litter testing and then estimating the availability of those nutrients in your litter. Next, you can collect soil samples to determine the existing nutrient levels in your soil for your crops, and then estimate the expected crop yield and the corresponding crop nutrient requirements for the crops that you're going to be growing. Then you can determine the litter application rate needed to match the nutrient availability in your litter in the soil compared to the amount required for the crops. And then you would determine how much fertilizer application, commercial fertilizer application, you would need to provide for the nutrients that are not available in the litter. So you would supplement those. And lastly, here are my sources cited. I hope you enjoyed this. I'm sorry that it was 21 minutes long, but I think that you got some good information out of this as I did, and I hope that you enjoyed it.